Good evening and welcome back to part 4 of our Diverse Ed World Book Day event. I'm not going to say I've kept the best to last. This is the miscellaneous category to wrap up our final chapter, but I know there's a lot of energy in the room, so we're going to have a very dynamic conversation. So welcome, Joe, Jill, Action Jackson and Mandy. It is lovely to see you here. Have you all got a copy of the book to flash at us? Flash up your book jackets. I know you've got a few books, Jill. Awesome. Showing off now, Jill. Showing off. So let me ask each of you to tell us where you're coming from tonight. Joe, where are you joining us from?
Hello, I'm joining you from home in Manchester.
Fantastic. Lovely to see you. Jill, where are you tonight?
So I'm in Newark in Nottinghamshire.
Fantastic. Action Jackson, where are you in the world?
I am tuning in from Gravesend, Kent.
In Kent? I didn't realize you were living in Kent now, or are you just there for work?
You know, one had to get that 4-bedroom house with a parking lot. You know, got 2 kids in that.
And Mandy, where are you joining us from?
I'm joining you from East London.
It's lovely to see you. I'm glad you're feeling better, Mandy. I was worried you weren't going to be able to join us, so thank you for joining us. So the books in this category are slightly different. We have 4 educators who have written books that might seem like more fictional or a different kind of perspective. And that's why I put you all together, because I think everyone's got a book inside them, but sometimes it's a book for children, sometimes it's an education book, sometimes it's a fiction book. So I'm going to invite each of you to tell us a little bit about your books. We've got Action Jackson, who's the author of Happy 365, which is just his brand, bringing positivity to the world. Jill, who many of us know has written academic educational books like Making the Leap, but she's stepped into the fictional space. And I can remember sitting next to Jill at a Woman-led event where her pledge was to publish a book that year. So she's going to talk us through moving to fiction. Joe has written Bottled with his brother, and a very personal narrative as to why that book has been written and how it's been used in primary schools. And Mandy has stepped into children's literature and has written the first of, I know it's going to be a series of books called Azani Run. So I'm really excited about this category because it shows us different ways to perhaps find our voice and use our voice. So Action Jackson, come on, jump in. Tell us about Happy 365. How did this book come into existence? What was your writing journey like?
Well, yeah, it's great to have me here. Thank you so much. Great to be here with everybody else. Action Jackson, UK Ambassador for Happiness. And my mission is to create a world where our young people wake up happy and go to bed fulfilled. I did a TED Talk. And after the TED Talk, I didn't know that there was a representative of a major publisher in the room. They're like, oh, we'd like you to write a book. I'm like, forget it. I don't do books. I only do videos. So throughout lockdown, I was forced to write the book and go through it. Happy School 365 is literally 21 different ideas to motivate your learners. Instinctively, I know how to connect with young people, how to get through to them and how to get them motivated doing what they need to do to be happy. But other educators may not know. So it's got all the secrets on how to tap into the young person's thinking, how to help them to connect with their why. And I share practical tips on how to actually get the young person feeling happy 365, because I do believe it's possible to be happy 365 days of the year. And if you don't believe that, come fight me for it.
And I love that because I know quite a few of our network have done things like TED Talks. So to think that sometimes when we're talking, someone's listening and then reaches out to us to then translate it into the written word, I think that's a really interesting kind of like thread to how to find a publisher. Actually, they might find you when you're talking at an event one day.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to just, if you're thinking of writing a book, just get yourself out there with your idea, and because they're always looking for someone to get there. Don't ever think you don't have a story. Everyone has a story that needs to be told.
I love that. Thank you, Action. Let me swing over to Jill. So Jill, like you did your EdD, you published Making the Leap, but then you've moved into fiction. Tell us about that transition and how you went about publishing your fiction.
Okay, Hannah. So yeah, I did a doctorate after I'd stepped down from headship, and I wrote a book about it, which is called Making the Leap, moving from deputy to head. And I did an audio version of it last March as well, which was very entertaining to record. And Making the Leap is great because it's got a refreshing audience. So as people get to the point where they might be interested in moving into headship, they often read it and respond to me. So that's fantastic. But I didn't want to write any more books about education. I wrote blogs and articles and sections of books. And then I wrote, as you know, a chapter in the first Women Ed book. And when the book came out in 2019, can you remember we were asked to, it might even have been your idea, Hannah, to record a short snippet of how we'd been 10% braver and what we would do if we were 10% braver still. And I said, I thought I was 10% braver when I did my doctorate and I wrote Making the Leap. But if I were 10% braver still, I would write a novel. I've always wanted to write a novel. And yes, at that Women Ed event, it was the last face-to-face Women Ed on conference. It was in Sheffield in October 2019. And when we put our pledges up at the end, I actually said, I will try to write a novel. And you were one of the people who said, try. You shouldn't say try. You should say, I am going to write a novel. And I said, well, I don't know whether I can, but I want to give it a go. So in winter of 2019, I started writing fiction. And several people have mentioned tonight, haven't they? Then the pandemic happened and the landscape shifted. And it actually meant for some of us, we had more time to write. So through 2020 and 2021, I carried on writing and I wrote 3. So I've written 3 short novels. The first is called The Dresser. The second is called One Word. And one of the things I talk about in One Word is Women Ed. It's about women, women's choices, women's friendship. And Women Ed features. And Hannah actually features, but I give her a different name. See if you can spot Hannah if you read One Word. And then The Button Box was the third one. And I self-published. I put all 3 together in one volume. So you can get them as an ebook or you can get them all together in a paperback. And I used Kindle Direct Publishing. And Kindle Direct Publishing is very interesting. First of all, it doesn't cost you anything. So you don't have to pay anything to have your book out there, including if it's a paperback. There's no stock of paperbacks. Amazon produce a copy of the 3 novels if anybody orders it and it arrives. They're just printed to order. But you have to promote it yourself. You have to promote, because if you haven't got a publisher or an agent, nobody's doing that for you. So what I wanted to say tonight is if you have a book in you, if you have a novel in you, then go for it, write it, share your story. If you decide to publish it and you want to publish it yourself, talk to me. I can give you some advice about how to go through that process and how to promote it as well. I love promoting it and I love talking to people who've read the books about which ones they liked, what they thought. It's just been a fantastic experience and I am so proud. I'm so proud that I've done this because it has required me to put myself out there. It's different from writing about education. It's much more personal. When you write fiction, a lot of it is about who you are and that takes a certain amount of courage because you feel vulnerable. And especially when you put it out there, is anyone going to read it, like it, talk about it? But go for it.
That transition is so interesting, Jill. I know you were listening to part 3. Emma Turner's almost done the opposite, that she did her books that were lived experience, personal narrative. No one can argue when it's your story. And then she's moved into to doing more academic, more researchy, and she had the massive imposter syndrome. You had the imposter syndrome going the opposite way because people are used to you writing about education and leadership, and this is a different kind of skill set. So it's just interesting listening to the parallels or the oppositions in your 2 narratives there as well. So thanks, Jill. I'm going to swing over to Joe. So Joe, tell us about Bottled and how Bottled came into being.
Sure. So I am the co-author of Bottled. Tom, who is my brother, we wrote this book together, and our journey into Bottled being published wasn't a typical one. It was quite strange, really. What happened was that a number of years ago now, mental ill health came very close to our family. And what we realized during that time is that we weren't prepared to navigate that. None of us talked very openly about our emotions. We didn't have the skills to do that. No one had ever encouraged us to, really. And throughout that experience as a family, we learned to become more emotionally honest and to have these emotionally honest conversations. And it truly transformed all of our lives. And Tom and I, my brother, we were both primary school teachers. We were sat down one evening and we said, we have the power to really change this as a habit in our classrooms, in our schools, with the young people, so that these young people don't grow up and only learn to be emotionally honest when they're faced with a challenge that forces them to. It becomes habitual for them or usualized. So we started doing this work in our classrooms where we built what we called an emotional library, a range of books where we could talk about feelings and emotions and empathy with the young people that we worked with. And throughout that project, we kind of felt there was a book missing. There's lots of brilliant children's picture books that talk about specific emotions experienced by specific characters, but we couldn't find a book that kind of touched on this overarching theme of being emotionally honest and the power that has. So we wrote one together, and it was for our classroom. It was for our community. We made a little copy of it. I drew some illustrations. I'm going to be honest, the first one was rubbish, but we used it in our classrooms and we read it. I was teaching year 6 at the time. I think Tom was in year 3. And we hadn't really anticipated what impact that would have in our own classrooms. And from that, other teachers started to say, hey, can we have a copy? We'd love to use this too. And things started to escalate to the point where a crowdfunding publisher, our publisher Unbound, got in touch with us and said, we'd love to work with you. And the way that crowdfunding publishing works is that people essentially buy their copy before it exists. And when enough people have done that, the money is raised to publish the book, which is daunting because Tom and I were like, maybe 3 people will be interested. Are we going to get the amount that we need? But we did. We were amazed because teachers and social workers and educational psychologists, this whole array of people came together and funded our book because they saw that it was important too. And now we have Bottled, we have a book, not because Tom and I thought it was a good idea, but because hundreds, thousands now actually, of teachers and educators working with young people saw that there was value in this conversation.
I love that. It's like reverse engineering, really, isn't it? Like having the idea to do the book, but also getting the interest. It goes back to Jill's point about sort of the vulnerability of actually doing the marketing, but having Unbound pledge that support for you. I've spoken to a few people recently who've used that publisher in particular. So even people listening tonight, making a note of the publishers that people have worked with and what's worked for different authors, I think is a takeaway as well. So Mandy, tell us about Azani Runs and how this book came into fruition.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Hannah. Azani Runs came into fruition with me just sitting and watching my little nephew run around a chair. Literally, that's what happened. So went back home for the summer, and my nephew, who was about 3 at the time, just woke up and started running around a chair in the living room where his mom was sat. And I say this to people, and they tell me, really? That is what he loves to do. This little boy doesn't walk anywhere. 1 minute he'll be in the kitchen, the next minute he'll be in the bedroom, and then he'll be in the veranda, and then he'll be outside. And it just occurred to me that in all the books that I've read, in all the schools that I've taught at and children I've read to and read with and libraries I've visited, I've never come across a book that just talked about one simple thing that a child loved to do, with no big adventure secret, nothing went missing, nobody died, nothing rolled down the hill, just a simple, fun, open story. And I thought, well, you know what? I'll write it. And that's what I did. I've had lots of books that I've written but not published. They're all sat just watching me. I'm trying to figure out what to do with them next. And I thought it would be a great idea to start with Azani Runs because movement and learning mesh together so well. And I remember being a primary school teacher, and every concept that was difficult, like teaching time or fractions, you couldn't do it by simply talking to anybody. There needed to be cutting of a cake, the making of chocolates, the breaking up of chocolate, something active. And I thought it'd be great to introduce time with this. Hence, I don't know how many of you have read Azani Runs. I bring in the element, well done, Hannah. I bring in the element of teaching time, just introducing time with fun activities. And then at the end, because I'm an educator at heart, I had to put in the work. So there are some activities at the end where parents and carers can just talk to their children about time, about them, about how the day passes, and introduce such a fun-loving concept with them. I am from St. Lucia. Anybody who knows me for 30 seconds knows that. It's a lovely island in the Caribbean, And I felt it was necessary to put little elements about St. Lucia in there, and found a fantastic young lady to do the graphics. And she ensured that she listened, which is just listening to Jill a while ago, and the daunting nature of self-publishing. I found someone who listened to what I wanted, who was very keen to get every element of what I wanted into the illustrations. And I think that's what's really helped Azani Runs come to life. So nice and bright and vibrant, and really speaking to a child's way, thank you very much, of being while celebrating the country that I'm from. The other element to Azani Runs is that some of the names that we see in stories can be quite generic, and I am on a mission to ensure that lesser known names are published. So I'm attempting to get all my nephew and niece's names in print. So book one of hopefully many. And as Hannah was saying, that is part of a series, a family movement and discovery, because each of my nephews and nieces like something different. I've got one who loves dinosaurs, another who loves dancing, one who loves adventure stories, and one who loves gaming. So there wasn't a way to put just one thing, all these things into one book. So I felt it was necessary to bestow upon them an adventure of their own.
I love it, Mandy. I'm going to stay with you for a question for a second about this idea of the kind of the branding, the marketing, the self-promotion. Mandy had her book launch at the St. Lucian High Commission. How did you manage to wangle that? Like, how did you manage to get such a prestigious kind of like venue to host you for your book publishing?
Well, I am a St. Lucian, as I've said, and I've always been interested in development and bringing the diaspora together, to the point where I started off doing a master's in education. And after the first 2 sessions, I couldn't do it and changed it to a master's in development and development management. So looking at a country, looking at its people, and thinking about how wherever you are able to bring people together to explore their skills and to help the development of where you're from. And I've been working with the High Commission, supporting, volunteering, carrying dishes, whatever needs to be done. I've been doing it for many, many years. And I felt it was necessary to bring a bit of that type of thinking into the event. I didn't want my book launch just to be me sitting, smiling, taking pictures and signing books. I needed to bring the diaspora around me. And alongside my book, there were about 25 other members of the diaspora showcasing what they have to offer. So we made it a community event. Yeah.
I love that. And Action, we know you're a really quiet, shy human being. I imagine you found the marketing of your book really, really hard.
Well, I'm a big mouth on Twitter. I love making a big noise, and I think it's so important you live the message. But it's been quite interesting because by nature I didn't see myself as an author. So when I wrote the book, it sat on the shelf for quite a long while. So I do find myself having to say, oh yeah, by the way, I do have a book. So I promote more of my videos. My videos are out there more than the books. So I score low on marketing the book. So I'm having to learn to really just bring the book in everything and just say, hey, the book is available. So yeah, I market a lot more my videos than the books, but I think going forward, you're going to be hearing more.
And I haven't seen you and your guitar for a while. Have you written a song that goes with the book?
I have written a few songs. Yes, I'll do one tonight. Tag you and you can share it.
I love that. Okay, I'd love that because I think that's how I know you communicate. You get us all off on stage and you get us singing along. We could basically be your promo girls and boys for you.
Why not?
Let me swing back to Joe. So Joe, I love seeing all the posts on social media where teachers are tweeting you and your brother about how they're using your book in their curriculum. That must be an amazing feeling to see the kind of the cascade and the impact of the book.
I just cry all the time. I cry every time I see one. I was in a school today, and again, so moving. I was in a school a few weeks ago. I went to visit them, do some class. We do classroom workshops based around the book, and their year 6 children had made this whole video. All of their computing project had been putting together this video all about our book, and I just sat in the hall and just cried. It was embarrassing how much I was crying, but it really is. I think we sat down and we wrote this for the 30 children in our class, or for the couple of hundred children in our school community. And to see that teachers are now taking it, adapting it, making it their own, and the reach of it is getting so much broader. I mean, I'm not being dramatic when I say that it is being emotionally honest has transformed all of my relationships. It's changed all of my relationships for the better in such a huge way. And to see that conversation is happening in our primary schools, and just some of the stories I hear from teachers, it really is. I mean, I could cry now, and I don't want to do that, but yeah, it really is moving.
You're allowed to cry. Ultimately, it's tears of pride, isn't it? I'm sure we've all had a few tears at some point about things we've written. Jill, can I ask you about target audience? Because when you were writing Making the Leap in 10% Braver, like, there was such a clear target audience of who was going to read it. How do you decide who to write to when you were writing fiction? Who was your ideal kind of reader?
I think a lot of people write the kinds of books that they would like to read. I think that's quite common, really. On the advice of a friend, I actually opened a second Twitter account, which is called Jill Berry Writes, where I just connect with people and I talk about writing and reading. So it's a much smaller network than Jill Berry 102. But it's been really interesting to talk to other new writers and self-published writers, indie authors and whatever. So I think a lot of us really write the kind of books that we would read, and therefore I think my audience, I think it's women generally, and I think it's older women generally. One of the issues that I had when I read Diverse Educators and Manifesto, Hannah, a lot of the section on ageism really hit home. It made me think about age discrimination, which is so common, either because you're considered too young or you're considered too old. When I was trying to approach agents, most of the agents were very young women. And I just thought, they're not the sort of people who would particularly enjoy this. It's not the target audience, probably is women age 40 plus, I think. But I mean, I know men who've read it and enjoyed it and cried. Joe, they cry, and they're very honest about the fact that it makes them cry at times. I'm giving it a bit of a push at the moment because I think it's a good Mother's Day gift. I think a lot of the people that I connect with, their mothers are probably in the right age bracket target audience. So that's my push on Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook.
You're going to have a spike in sales tonight now, Jill. That's very clever, clever marketing, isn't it? I know because for my friends who aren't in education, I wouldn't give them making the leap, but I have given copies of your fiction book to my friends who just love reading. So it's that thinking about who in our lives might read all these different books that we've been hearing about and talking about tonight.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to ask each one of you just to wrap up tonight's event for us by leaving just a bit of a nugget, really, with the audience about how to get started, because you've all started your writing journeys in very different ways. You've all found your voices in different ways. There was going to be one takeaway, one sort of piece of advice. Joe, what would your advice to the listeners be if they're listening either live or they're watching the recording later?
I mean, for me, when I think about writing Bottled, it came from a real life experience in my life. It's a book that I wish I'd had, because it would have changed my family's lives if we'd been able to read it when we were younger. So I guess my advice is to write what you know, and to write the book that you wish you'd had yourself.
I love that. Mandy, how about you? And when are you going to publish all those books that are sat on your computer?
My one bit of advice would be, your story is valid. Everyone has a story in them, as was said earlier, and your story is valid. Write it now.
Love that. Thank you. Action.
Get your mobile phone, put 12 minutes on the counter, on the clock, and just write in that 12 minutes and do it every day. You be and don't stop. Don't think, just pour. Whatever comes to you, just pour. 12 minutes and then tag me on whatever you've written every day. Because before you know it, you get the flow, and then connect with all these amazing people, because they'll give you the next direction after you've done your 12 minutes for 12 days.
I love that. Deliberate practice. And Miriam talked earlier on about bridging from journaling to writing for yourself, writing for others. Jill, how about you? Final words of wisdom.
I think one of the things I wanted to say, I really enjoyed listening to Miriam talking about her from hood to headship. When I wrote Making the Leap, I felt there were very few women writing about leadership. There are more and more women writing about all sorts of things, but not leadership. So I hope women will write about leadership. But on the fiction side, I would just say, write for yourself. The whole process of writing is actually very energizing and enjoyable. If other people want to read it, that's a bonus. But write for yourself, write from your heart. Mandy's point and Joe's point, write the book you wish someone had written for you, and believe in yourself. If you think you have a story in you, write it. Start writing tonight. 12 minutes, send them to action. You won't regret it.
I love it.
Thanks,
Thank
Hannah.
you so much. Part 4, sorry, authors and speakers for joining us. And thank you to everyone who's tuned in tonight. I know we've had some people listening to the whole event. The recording will be edited and it will go on a website. It will go out in the newsletter. So we hope to continue to inspire people. If you are publishing a book this year or you're planning on writing a book this year, reach out. I will put you on the list for next March. Maybe that's the accountability you need, that you're going to be talking about the book that you actually need to write. But go and enjoy your evening. Thank you so very much. And thank you for joining us for World Book Day 2023.
Thank you, Hannah. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Hannah.